Hey guys, this is Mitch with Fine.CGI, and today we're going to talk about how to build a level loading system inside of Godot. Now, this is a continuation of our horror game, but this also is a standalone tutorial, so you can do either way. Both ways work fine. So we're going to go through the process of building out a level loading system that is generic, that will work for us. We're also going to talk about multi-threading and about how to do a actual loading bar. We're going to talk about how to call that from a button and how to call it properly from a door so you can load levels inside of your game. So that's what I have in store for you guys today. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing you'll notice is that I am in the horror game series. Now, you don't necessarily need to have followed the horror game series to actually do this tutorial, but for all intents and purposes, I am using this series as a way to kind of teach you how to build a game. So you can either take this tutorial as is, or of course you can use the horror game series and use all of the code that is in that. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go up to scene, new scene. We're going to create a user interface, and this is basically going to be our loading scene. So basically, anytime that we want to load our level, we can basically just call this loading scene and we'll be able to use it to load our level. Now I'm going to come up here. I'm going to double click on my control node. I'm going to type loading screen, and then I'm going to right click, add in a child node. I'm going to add in a VBox container, and we'll make it, I don't know, about yay big, give or take. And we'll put underneath that two labels like so. So I'm going to control duplicate them. I'm going to come to my inspector here, and I'm just going to type loading, and then we will put a name. And that will basically allow us to have some form of loading feedback as to what we're loading. And then I'm going to click on here. I'm going to right click, add in a child node. I'm going to add in another VBox container, and I'm going to drag it down to, I don't know, about here-ish. We'll make it about yay big. We'll right click, add a child node, add in another label, and we'll duplicate that. We'll select this label and type tip, and we'll just type tip here. There we go. And if we want to, we could align these a little bit better by coming in here and adding in a control node like so, and then just dropping these two guys inside of it like so. Now that I'm thinking about it, we can just kind of do this. I can put it over here, and I can snap both of these guys to the right center. Grab this guy, drag him up like so, and then grab this guy and drag him down like so. And when we load our level, we're going to need to have some kind of progress bar so the actual user can see a progress bar. So we're going to right click our loading screen, add in a child node, and add in a progress bar. Now you can make this a texture progress bar, or you can make a general purpose progress bar. It's up to you. Texture is nice if you want to theme it. Progress bar is great if you don't want to theme it. In my case, I don't really care if I theme it, so I'm going to go with progress bar, and I'm going to make it about this big. I'll click on this guy here, and I'm going to snap it to the bottom of the screen. We'll pull this up like so, and then we'll pull this together like so, so that way it's at the center of our screen. I'm going to grab this tip, and I'm going to drag it down a tiny bit. There we go. And that'll just give us a little bit more flexibility. So what we're going to do is we're going to have it so it displays the name of the scene we're loading. And if we have any tips, we can put our tips here. Now, it's up to you guys on what kind of tips you want to put in here, but of course, we could burn that bridge when we get there. Now, what I'll do is I'll right-click my loading screen. I'm going to attach a script, and we're going to call it loadingscreen.gd, and we will click create. Now, first things first, we're going to need a couple booleans here. So I'm going to say var loading. We'll make that a boolean. Then I'll say var path. I'll make that a string. Var wait for input, and I will make that a boolean as well. And once we have these three values up here, we're going to come down here and we're going to create a function. So we'll type func, and we'll call it load level. And we'll pass in a path, and we'll make that a string. All right, now what this function is going to do is it's going to actually load our level. And in Godot 4, loading our level has changed quite a bit. So first we need to set our path. So we'll say self.path is equal to path. And the reason why is because you need to have an outside reference to the path that you're loading, just because we're going to be calling a function outside of our function call, so outside of this guy here. So we need to have ways to control our state up here. So that's basically the reason why we have this path variable out here. Now, first things first, I'm going to show our loading screen. So we'll say show, and then we're going to check if our resource loader dot has cached, and then we're going to pass in that path. And basically, the reason why we do this is because we want to check if our resource loader actually already has our scene loaded. Now, if you don't know anything about the resource loader, basically the resource loader works by loading our data in from disk into memory. And has cached basically says, hey, is this object already in memory? Is this resource already here? If it is, then we can just load that and then go ahead and fire off our stuff. If it's not, though, then we can go ahead and load it. So if it has cached, then resource loader dot load threaded get, and we'll pass in our path. And then we'll say else resource loader dot load threaded request, and we'll pass in our path, comma, quote for our hint, comma, true. And then we'll say loading is equal to true. Now, all this code is going to do is when we load it, we're going to say, hey, load a level. Here's our path. Here's what we're doing. If we have a cached, then do this. Else, we're going to go ahead and load our level. Now, we do need a way to inform our system that we're loading information. So if we head up to our process, we can just check if loading then var progress is equal to an array here. And then we could say var status is equal to resource loader dot load threaded get status path comma progress. Then we can basically just check if our status is equal to resource loader dot thread load in progress. Then we can basically say, okay, we are in progress. So we're going to print our progress. So we will say progress. We'll pull back that first index multiplied by 100. Else if status is equal to resource loader dot thread load loaded, then we're going to first set our process as false, which is basically going to stop this process function from running just because we don't need it to run anymore. We've already loaded our stuff. We're going to say print level loaded, and then we are going to set our wait for input equal to true. And that should do it for us and from here we can basically load our scene. So we'll just say var scene is equal to resource loader dot load threaded get, and then we'll pass in our path like that. And then finally, we can actually start changing our scene. Now, in my case, I'm going to create a function for this just because it's nice to have a function for this capability in case in the future I want to change my scene or I want to load a resource for whatever reason. I have some kind of function to work with that. So I'll type func change scene, and I will pass in my resource. And I will make that into a packed scene like that, providing that it lets me packed scene. Okay, it does work. All right. And when we're doing our change scene, all we have to do is we need to instantiate that resource. So we'll say var node current node is equal to resource dot instantiate, and that's going to allow us to instantiate our resource, and then we need to add it as a child to our actual scene. So we can say get tree dot root dot add child, and we can add our current node like that. And then we actually need to eliminate all of the nodes under our root, except for the node that we actually have. Now, I did run into a slight bug earlier where if I looped through and I eliminated all my children nodes and then I added my child, it actually caused problems. It actually crashed Godot for whatever reason. I don't know if it's an outstanding issue or something like that. So we're going to work around that. So we'll say for item in get tree dot root dot get children, then we will just say if item does not equal node, then get tree dot root dot remove child item, and then we'll queue free it. Now, technically speaking, you don't need to remove it as a child to queue free it, but I like to do that because it makes things a little bit easier. It makes things a little bit cleaner for me. And we'll copy current node and change this to current node, and that should do our change scene. Now, all I'll do is I'll come up here and I'll just say change scene, and I will pass in my scene. Now we could make this a little bit cleaner by grabbing this like so and pasting it into here and getting rid of this guy if we wanted to. That can help with some memory usage, but it's up to you guys. Now once we have this, let's hit Control S and let's save this as loading scene.tscn, and then we'll head up to our scene, new scene. We'll go to user interface, and we will actually create a button to load our scene. So I'm going to right click, add in a child node, add in a button, and we'll bring it down to about right here, and we'll hit start game like so, and then we'll right click our control node, attach a script, and call it main menu.gd. We'll click on our button, we'll rename it start game, which I need to actually fix my capital there. So start game. And then we'll go to node, button down. We'll attach it to our control node here, and we'll say on start game, let's load that level. So we need to get a reference to our actual level that we're loading, and we also need to hide our button. So first things first, I'm going to say get node start game dot hide like that, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in my level loading scene like so. I'm going to hide it, and I'm going to say get node loading screen dot load level dot, and I think we called it load level right here, and we'll pass in a path. And in our case, our path is actually located on level 1 wakeup.tscn. And in Godot, if you just drag this guy in and let go, it will already add the actual path to your level, just like that. Awesome. And now we can hit Control S. We can save this as main menu.tscn. And we can head over to our loading screen. And we can say on load level, we're going to show, we're going to do our load, and then we are going to go from there. I think that should work. So now if we hit play, we click start game, hopefully it did load. It looks like it crashed on us, but it did load our level. You can see we actually do have our level here. Invalid, get index, hit sound on base nil. So my guess is that my grab object resource hit sound dot wave. So my guess is all my resources aren't hooked up 100% correctly. So I will say if grabbable object resources hit sound wave does not equal null, and we'll pass that in, and hopefully that will fix our issue. So let's try that again. And there you go. We loaded our level. Awesome. And that's basically how you create a very basic loading screen. Now you'll notice that our level loads really fast, and unfortunately I can't really show you guys how to make it go any slower. But what I can do is I can at least show you the code behind how to make it such your loading progress bar actually works. So if we click on loading screen and we come into our progress, you can see we have our print progress. You can see we had 0.74. So if we come in here, we can basically just say $ progress bar dot value is equal to, and we can just grab this value here. And that'll basically just handle it for us. So we don't actually have to do any additional work here. Now, also, if we wanted to have a press any key to continue type of loading screen, a lot of times when people have slower computers, if your level is large, you may not want to just immediately throw them into the game. You might want to just wait for a second, let them hit a button so that way the game will load. And the way to do that is actually pretty simple. If we go to our loading screen code here and we actually come in here, we can basically change this change scene and put it elsewhere. So we'll take this, we'll cut it, and we'll type wait for input is equal to true. And then we'll come down here and we'll override our input function. So we'll say func underscore input event, and then we'll say if wait for input, then we'll say if event is input key event, like that. We can paste that, and that should do it for us. So now if we go to our main menu, we hit play, we click start game, it'll load. And you'll see that it doesn't say 100% yet. That's because we need to update that. But you can see we have 74%. That means our stuff is actually working. If we press any key, so we hit spacebar, we are now in our game. Awesome. So now let's fix our small 100% issue. So we'll go to our loading screen. We'll come down here and we'll say $ progress value is equal to 100. And that will set it so that it's at 100%. Perfectly, and that should fix that issue. Now, the next thing on our list is how do we set up a tip system? Now, that should be pretty easy. If we head up to the top, we can come in here and say var tips. We'll hit colon array of type string, and we will go ahead and export that. So we're going to hit at export var tips, and we will save it. And now if we head over to our loading screen, we go to our inspector, you can see we have an array of strings here. And that will give us the ability to set up our tips. So now if we take a look at our tips over here on the upper right-hand side of our inspector. So if we make sure we have our loading screen selected, we click on our tips and we click on right here, we can actually add in different tips. So tip 1, tip 2, and tip 3. And then we can come in here and we can basically just set it up so that when we're loading, we can show our tips. So we could just basically come in here and on change scene, just say $ label, and we need to actually name our stuff. So if we come in here and just say tip value and tip value. I actually think this is level name and tip value. So I could just say $ tip value like that dot text is equal to, and I'm just going to pull a random value out of this export. So the easiest way to actually do that is by saying tips bracket bracket rand I %, tips dot size, like that. And what this does is actually pretty simple. So rand I means random integer. A % is modulus, and then tip size. So we're basically saying pick a random number inside of this number and then return that number, more or less. And then basically we have our text. Now we want to make sure we check if tips dot size does not equal 0. That way we can actually, make sure we have a little bit of error checking, and we can do the same thing for our name. So we will probably need to adjust this. And actually it looks like I have changed this in change scene. So that's my fault. So let me cut that and go throw it in load level. That way it runs right off the bat at the beginning. So we'll do that. But in my case, for the level name, I don't actually have a level name. So what I'll do is I'll just pull back our path and use our level name as my actual thing. And to do this, what we'll do is we'll split out our actual values, okay? So basically we'll say path dot split, and we'll hit a quote, and we will split it by slash, and then that should return an array. So we'll say var items is equal to path dot split, and then we'll just say $ control dot level name dot text is equal to our items dot count -1, and that should give me a pretty decent result. We just need items dot count. There we go. And that should give me a decent result, hopefully. So we will test that by going into main menu. You can see we have a few tips here, so hopefully that will work. We'll hit play. We'll click start. And we have a crash, invalid index count on base packed string array. So let's see what we can get back with a packed string array and see if I can do perhaps dot. Well, it says count exists, but it is a function call. It expects at least one, so does dot size exist? So we'll try dot size. Let's refresh that. Hit start. You'll see it says loading level 1 wake up scene tip 1, and we're at 100%. Now if we refresh this and try this again, start tip 3 loading level 1 wake up.tscn. Now we might not want that .tscn, so what we can do is we can come in here and say var level name is equal to items and pull back our last index like so, dot split, and split one more time on the period symbol. Now that means that our level names cannot have a period in it. So that's something to keep in mind. But once we do that, then we can change this to level name and pull back the first index of our level name. And in theory, that should work. So if we come in here, hit start, level 1 wake up. And now it's going off of our actual scene name. And that's, in my opinion, one of the easiest ways to actually handle this. Now, once we have this, we're basically good to go. We have our level stuff settled. We have our stuff set up. And it seems like everything pretty much is good to go. If we wanted to, we could have it so that we could load a level based off of perhaps an object interaction, right? So if you remember, if we come over here and we take a look at our, I believe we had an interaction object, if I remember correctly. It's been longer than a few seconds since I've looked at this, but in my case, I think I'll make a level loading script. So we'll head up over to our level 1 wake up. I'm going to go to 3D and I'm going to head to this door here. And basically, when this door gets interacted with, we're going to want to call out some kind of load level script, right? So we can basically just come in here, right click this node, add a child, and let's add a static body 3D. Let's drop that above my door. We'll put the door underneath it. We'll right click, add in a child node, and add in a collision shape 3D. We're going to make that into a box shape like so. We'll zoom in on that guy and we'll make it about, I don't know, about yay big, give or take. So we'll just drag this guy up here like so. And that'll basically give us the ability to actually pick this door. Now, I remember correctly, when I hit E on this door, let's go check my character script real quick. We'll come up here and we have a button, I believe it's interact. You can see we have obj.interact right here. So what that means to me is that our object needs to have some kind of interact attached to it. So if we take a look at our door.gd, you can see that we have an interact here. So I'm just going to grab this guy. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go back to my static 3D door right here. And we'll just call this load level interactable. I'm going to right click, attach a script. I'm going to call it load level interactable, hit create. We're going to just drop in a func interact like that. And what we'll need to do is we need to basically have some way of setting up our load level. And what I mean by that is when a user wants to load their level, you can't just say, okay, I'm just going to load the level and be done with it. You need to basically override your interface and load that level. And to do this, we're going to need some kind of global reference to our inventory scene. And we're also going to need a way to basically signal around all of these things. So what I'm going to do is I am going to file a new script. We're going to add in a game manager because it's always important to have a game manager. Game managers exist to basically manage your game, hence the name game manager. Now we'll come in here and we'll basically just say func load level, and we'll pass in a path like so. And what we'll do is we'll say resource loader.load, and we will load our, if I remember correctly, it was called loading screen.tscn. And we'll make that into a var load scene is equal to that. And then we will say load scene, and we'll type this as a packed scene like so. And then we'll say load scene dot instantiate, and we're going to need to make that into some kind of object. So var load scene node is equal to that. And then we can basically just say get tree dot root dot add child load scene node, and that will allow us to attach our scene to our node. And then we could just say load scene node dot, and you can see that we don't really get any auto completion. Unfortunately, with GDScript, you don't get that auto completion like you would with other languages. So what we can do is we could just take a look at our load scene, and it should be load level path. So we'll head back to our game manager, wherever it went. There we go. Dot load level. And for the path, we'll just pass in our path. And there we go. And now if we go into project settings, we go into auto load, we can go ahead and add in our game manager. So we'll bring in our game manager like so, hit close, and then we can basically just go back to our load level scene and we can say game manager dot, we should be getting back something. Let's take a look at our project settings. I didn't add it, so that's my fault. So hopefully that'll pick it up. Game manager dot load level, and we can pass in a path. Now in my case, I'm just going to come up here and say at export var level path as a type string like so. And then I will just pass in my level path like that. And then when we click on our load level, you'll see we have a level path. So I can just grab my load level 1 wake up, providing that it wants to work. I can copy this guy, paste it in. And then in theory, if this is done correctly, which it probably won't work on the first try, but we can try it. We'll launch the load level 1 wake up level. We'll run up to it. We'll hit E to interact, and we get nothing. So that's not a good sign. So let's take a look at what's going on. So first things first, are we actually firing it off? Let's see. We'll throw a breakpoint on this, and then I will come in here. And we got nothing if we click on it. So that's not ideal. So let's see. We have some errors. No, we do have some debugger statement, but that's all non-error debug. So the question is, when we do interact, if action just released, raycast, get collider, if we're colliding. So this object doesn't have collision, which leads me to believe that it's on the wrong layer. So let's take a look. We need to be on layer 5 for collision to work. So let's take a look at our collision layer on our door here, load level door. It's on level 1, so that leads me to believe that that's why. Although this is on level 4, so I'm going to go with 1 and 4. We'll refresh and we'll see how that goes. So we'll run in here. The door will open. We'll run up here. You'll see that we have the red. We'll hit E, game manager.load level, hit play. And there we go. Cool. So you'll notice that we did run into a slight problem. If we run in here and we hit E, tempted to call load level and basically freed instance. That's because it cleared our game manager. So I was afraid this was going to happen because when we do our load level, we actually come in here and queue free everything from our remote. So if we refresh this, let's take a look at this real quick. I'll show you guys something interesting. So under our remote here, we have utilities, game manager, and node 3D. You can see here, we're coming into here and we're actually clearing out everything that's under our root. So utilities and game manager gets cleared out right here. So we can either make exclusions for that, or we can come in and instead of getting our children, we would need to just check to see if they're type node 3D. Maybe that would be a better option. I think that'll be the safer option of the group. So let's do that. So instead of doing for item in get root tree, if item is not current node, instead what we'll do is if item dot get underscore class is equal to a node 3D and item does not equal current node, and that should fix it. So let's try that. Whoops, I did my loading scene. So let's do level 1 wake up. We'll hit play. Let's see if that works. So we'll run in here. We'll run past our guy. We'll hit E. We loaded our level. We hit W. Cannot call method instantiate on null value. So let's take a look at our resources. I figured out what it was. So basically we need to queue free our loading screen when it's completed, because if you don't, then it's just going to stay up there and it's waiting for input. So it gets a null reference when it's completed. So that should fix that. And to show you guys, I can just hit play here. I can run in here like this. I can come over here. I can hit E. We load our next level, which is the same level in this case. But, you know, in your guys' case, it can be as many levels as you want. But at least we have our loading system working. Now, the last thing that we should probably do is our loading screen should have some kind of panel. So we'll add that in real quick. That way our screen is black because we don't want the user to be able to see the level behind it getting loaded. We'll just throw that in the background like that. And now when the user wants to load, it just goes into a black screen. Now we do have a small bug where our stuff is not quite right. So when our character runs into the level, you'll notice that when we run through here, we can open up our door, we come over here and we hit E. You'll notice that we immediately spawn into the next level. And unfortunately, that's not quite what we're looking for. So what we want to do is we want to basically make sure that the user lets off of any keys and then hit a key again. So we need to actually check for that. So what we can do is we can come into our script here. We can go into our loading screen. And right here where we're processing our event, we need to basically make it so that we check to see if there's any input key pressed. And then if it is pressed, we want to make sure we have it released and then basically flip a Boolean and then we'll be good to go. So what I'll do is I'll say, hey, wait for input. If input key is input key, then that's great. And then I'm going to create a Boolean up here that basically just says var input key pressed. And I'm going to make that into a Boolean type. And then I'll scroll down here and I'll basically just check for that. So if input key pressed, then we'll come in here and we will change our scene. So we'll actually come in here and do this. And then we'll come in here and we'll just say if not event.pressed, then set our input key pressed equal to false, else we're going to need to input key pressed is equal to true. And that should solve that small bug for us. So now if we come to our level 1 wake up, we hit play and then we run in here. We come in here, we hit E, and the game actually stops and forces us to basically wait. And then if we hit a key, then the game starts. And that's basically how I would want our stuff to work. Now, we could expand this a little bit, maybe add in like a fade in and a fade out, and that's pretty easy. You basically just add an animation player and then basically set your opacity of your scene to fade in and fade out. However, that's pretty simple. You guys could probably figure that out. If you have questions, let me know in the comments below and I'll help you out with figuring that out. But that is all I have for you guys today. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. Hey, you know, if you dislike this video, go ahead and hit that dislike button because I am here to make content for you guys. This video was a viewer suggested video, and as with all of my videos, so if you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments below and let me know because I'm always willing to try and learn new things or build new things. I am looking at a couple of multiplayer tutorials and I am looking at doing more of that 3D character controller tutorial videos as well because there's been a lot of people asking questions and wanting more things about that. So look forward to all of that. And of course, this horror game series is going to continue. I know it's been super slow moving just because work has been a nightmare. So, you know, I am sorry for that, but look forward to seeing more of this series. And hey, you know, if you guys have questions, leave them in the comments below or jump on my Discord, links in the description, and I'll be more than happy to help you out. But that is all I have for you guys today. So thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you all next time. Thanks.